Start up the torch here. Get a nice neutral flame going. Today we're going to do dichro. I got a piece of dichro here. Alright, going to start by warming up and cleaning the end here of a 12.7 millimeter rod. And I'm going to lay my dichro onto the side of this rod, so I want it clean and I want a nice end on it. So getting rid of that cracked glass and rounding up the end a little bit. Alright, that looks good. So now, holding my dichro in the back of the flame, and warming up the rod on one side. And every now and then, let the flame hit that dichro a little bit. And when I have this one side of the rod significantly melty, I'm going to lay that piece of dichro on that melted part, just like that. Push it down, and you should be able to get most of it down without any bubbles. Alright, that looks good. Now, I want to sort of mush down the edges. And I still need to keep that dichro out of the flame. So just using the edge of my tool here, warm up the edge and then roll it down. Warm up the edge, roll it down. Alright, do the same thing on the other side. Warm up the edge and roll it down. And then do the same thing on the ends as well. Just kind of spreading the glass out like butter. So that no bits of dichro are sticking out around the edges. Alright, that looks good. So now I'm just going to kind of bend this back into shape. Just lightly pressing it with the side of my marble mold there. And then I'm going to encase it with another rod. Now there's several modifications you could do here. You can fume, you can add color. I got a little bubble trapped in there, but it'll be alright. So, the best way I have found to encase the dichro at this point is to come in with my big flame on another rod of the same size, Keep this warm in the back of the flame here. And I want to warm up about the same amount of this rod as what I covered in my first one. So just about an inch, a little over an inch. And I want to gather it up, get it nice and juicy hot. That little piece off there. There we go. Now I'm just going to encase the first rod with this one. Come right over the edge here. And then I'm going to pull that rod off. Push it around a little bit with my marble mold there. And now it's just a matter of melting these two pieces together and getting that cleavage line melted together so that I don't get any bubbles. I'm going to put a handle on the other side here. That just helps me hold this piece up, keep it from flopping around too much while I melt in the edges. Alright, and then I'm just going to give it a pretty good twist all the way through. So that's a really thorough twisting. I'm going to take this bigger rod off just for a second. And then I'm going to use it to make the other half of the marble. But I'm just taking that part off temporarily. And cleaning up this part here. Now I want to round this out and get any of the little lines out and smooth it out. and get it centered up. I used my marble mold off to the side there. Alright, at this point I usually like to do a little sparkle check to make sure that none of the dichro is burned. That looks pretty good. So now I want to make a little bit of a clear lens on half of the marble. So get these pieces about to the same temperature. Join them together. And I'm going to just start feeding in and gathering up a good amount of glass from the clear rod. And as long as you're careful how you do it, you can melt a little bit and then push. And that will help round out this part of the marble. Alright, I usually like to make the clear section about a little bit more than half of the marble, but you can do whatever proportion you want, including none. So as soon as you have whatever amount of lens glass you want, flame cut that off there. Now there was a little bit of bad glass on the outside here. So I'm going to find that. I'm going to take that off. Right there. Okay, the rest of that looks good. So now I'll just proceed to round out this section of the marble here. And I'll use my mic close marble mold to help with that. It's off camera, but as you can see, it helps you round out things really quick. Now that I've got that, grab my handle here and attach onto this side. And I want this to be a relatively hot seal. It needs to be strong. And it should be as centered as you can get it. Take that handle off. Clean up the end a little bit here. Now, in order to make dichro really pop and the sparkle to be really visible, you want to put some kind of dark color behind it. So in this case, I have a nice dark cobalt blue here that I'm going to be using. But you can use black, you can use dark red, you can use dark greens, anything you want really. Just to give some background so that people can see the sparkle. Alright, before I put my backing on, I want to melt that sort of cleavage line in the middle here so that it's just a little bit more smooth. Because I'm going to lay my backing down right there, and I don't want to catch any bubbles in that little V area. Just heating right along that line and getting that glass to flow together a little bit better. And it'll smooth out here. Alright, that looks a little better. You can see that sort of V shape that was there is gone now. It's a lot more smoother transition. But there is still a little bit of bump there, which helps me see where my backing needs to go. I want to pull out a little point on my stringer before I start putting down the backing. That'll give me a nice place to come around and meet up with when I do the second line around. So hopefully that's visible here. But if there's a really blunt edge when you start out, it becomes tricky to make it meet up. So I started out kind of small, and now I'm making a big swipe, as big as I can. Now when I come to meet up with that, I want to heat that up a little bit, light it up a little bit, and then come in and over the edge. And I did it a little bit too slow, so I caught a little bit of clear in there. But normally you do that a little bit faster when you're not making videos. and you won't get that clear coming up. I'll show you how to fix that in just a second here. Just finish off the bottom of this. Now to fix the little V shape that you do get right there where you came back around, I heat this up right there and just drag a little bit of glass up into it. I did it too much, but you can use your shaping tool to bring it back into line. Nothing ever goes right when you're making videos. Anyway, here's that spot where a little bit of clear came up because I melted it just a little bit too much. So I want to melt that down so it's smooth. So there's no little V shape between the two lines anymore. Then I'm going to let it cool down. Once it's cooled down a little bit, then you can come in with another bit of glass and cover that up. I'm just going right over the top of that little hole. And then melting this in really good. And there we go. That will look better. So now I like to go around and just melt these lines together with a lot of heat, really close up to the flame here. Not that close, but getting it nice and hot and getting rid of all those little cleavage lines that were in between the layers I laid down. Now there are a lot of ways you can decorate your backings. I like to do dot stacks, fume dot stacks, frit, a bunch of different ways you can go here. But just for the sake of the video, I'm not going to do a fancy backing, just going to do the cobalt blue by itself. And all that remains at this point then is to just shape this marble into a round marble. So, get the big flame out again. And use a lot of heat to do that. And to make it easier, use my homemade rollers here. So just kind of using as much heat as I can, as directly as I can. To round up this marble. And I'll be using the My Close marble mold for some of it as well. You can see it's nice and juicy, it's moving around now. That is when you can take it out of the flame and use the My Close mold to get you a lot closer to a marble shape very quickly here. It pushed my marble off center on the handle there, but as you can see, it is a heck of a lot more round than it was. And it's easy to center it back up. So there we go. A couple more shaping steps for the bottom end here. Alright, that's looking a little better. Now, I have a punty made which has a little bit of the cobalt blue already on the end of it. And I like using that for cold seals onto the bottom of these kind of marbles. That way you don't discolor your marble on the bottom. So I'm going to make a cold seal here. That one is not super strong. So then flame cutting off the other clear handle here. Now, normally I would go back and forth between punties and change directions on this marble at least 3 times, but for the sake of the video, because this is not a marble shaping video, I'm just going to shape the front end of the marble right now and leave it however it comes out. It'll be pretty close to perfect. So again there I was using the mic close mold, and in this case I was doing it really softly because I have a kind of weak cold seal here on the back of the marble. So for the sake of brevity, let's just do one more shaping step, this time in the regular marble mold, because that's the one that I think actually gives a better finish. looks nice. It's not perfect, but it's really, really close to spherical. So we'll just polish the front a little bit here again. And this time I'm just going to let the lens cool down. I'm not going to touch it with the marble mold. Chill the puntee with my tool here. Tap it off. I put my puntee mark up and slightly forward like that. Carefully come around, point your torch down and melt in that puntee mark. There we go. So I'll let this cool down for a second here and then show you what the other side looks like. So there we go. That is what you're left with, what you end up with. It's hard to see, but it is rather sparkly and it's got a sort of pink and gold tone to it. It's very pretty.